Okay. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Melissa Coakley. I'm helping out and moderating some of these sessions for this conference. I've been really enjoying it so far. And I'm excited for the next one because I feel like it's one of those things that some people are fantastic at. And some people, if it doesn't come naturally to you, like I'm not sure it comes naturally to me, I have a little bit of a mental block. So I'm excited to get some expert advice on networking. So to introduce our expert, it's Bridget Manley, who is the managing owner of Ascent Design and Training, a boutique industrial design firm that designs learning experiences and develops software tools for the L&D industry. And she describes herself as a learning dev geek who specializes in applying research-based learning practices to e-learning and instructor-led training experiences. And she's going to teach us all how to network, even if we think we're terrible at it. So I'm excited. Hi, Bridget.
Hey, Melissa. Thanks for hosting this today. And thanks for everybody for showing up. I know it's a Friday, but I appreciate you taking your time to spend your Friday with us. We're going to talk about networking today. Fun times. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see
myself here.
A presentation I have set up for you. And it's going to move a few windows around. Okay. All right, cool. All right. Well, thanks for joining us today. Again, Networking 101, just the basics of networking, how you do it, why you do it, and how you can do it and not feel awkward about it. So I have found networking to be a really effective tool for myself professionally and personally to just grow in my professional capabilities and make some really good friends along the way. I will be going through this today. If you have any problems with the video, if the slide deck isn't showing up for you, please drop that in the chat and we will do our best to solve those issues as they happen. Otherwise, feel free to, drop in the chat, share where you're from, share some ideas you have. I am not the world's expert on networking, and so I'm sure that you probably have some life experience and ideas to share as well. So feel free to drop those in the chat as we go along. And I see a lot of people are already dropping in the chat. Awesome. Cool. Excellent. Thanks for joining us today. Okay, cool. So I am using a tool called Slido that we'll use throughout this session today. We're going to have some interactive polls and questions. So go ahead and scan the QR code that's on your screen now. That will sign you into the poll. Or you can go to slido.com and enter the code you see on your screen. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. If you have any questions, please let me know. Please drop those in the chat if you have questions accessing that QR code or accessing that poll. And while you're doing that, I'll just call attention to the fact that Luis kindly dropped my LinkedIn connection or my LinkedIn link into the chat. Feel free to connect with me, right? This is a session about networking, so feel free to reach out afterwards if anything of what I'm sharing today is going to resonate with you. Feel free to connect with me after. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and advance, but if you haven't had a chance to get to that code yet, you'll have another chance in a minute when one of the polls shows up. So we'll come back to that in just a second. But first, get my slide deck to work here. Maybe. Okay, there we go. So first, just a little bit about myself and my career path. So my current role is I'm a learning developer, learning dev geek. I love getting into tools and I love building the end deliverables that learners use mostly in career learning situations. So before that, though, I was a librarian for a small rural library district in Wyoming. Before that, I was a reporter and editor for small daily newspapers in Colorado and Wyoming. And before that, I was a teacher in training. I went to school. I got my bachelor's of English with the emphasis in secondary education with the plan of becoming a high school English teacher. Now, about halfway through my college degree, I realized I wanted to do something different. So I began my first career pivot at the ripe age of 22. So as you can tell, I've had 3 career transitions so far into completely different fields. I wouldn't be surprised if I transition at least once or twice more before my career is over. And so I'm just here to tell you, just kind of as a starting point, that I understand how difficult it can be to switch a career, because it affects, not only what you have to learn on a daily basis, but it also goes, kind of goes to your identity and how you see yourself. So I'm here to tell you it can be done. I have done it. Lots of other people have transitioned into this field. And hopefully the tips I'm going to share with you today will give you a little bit more confidence in building your professional network so you can make that transition successfully. Okay, so let's just do a quick overview of what we're going to do today. We'll start by, digging into what networking is and how it can help in your career transition. We'll explore some differences between virtual and in-person networking, some of the nuances between those, and some tips that you can use to be effective in either modality. Most importantly, though, we'll look at some general overall tips for effective networking. And this is going to be kind of more the mindsets and approach you want to use when you're in a networking situation. So throughout the session today, feel free to interact with me or with other attendees. Go ahead and drop ideas in the chat. I'm actually going to check the chat right now to see what thoughts we have so far. English majors rock. Thank you. English ed majors rock. Thank you. Yes. Excellent. Let's see. Yes. Abby has a good tip here, which is to make sure you share your profiles too and add more connections. Yeah, definitely. Okay, and Melissa, thank you for the feedback on the slide design. Slide design is kind of my jam, so I appreciate that. Okay, so let's start with the question. I want to know what first comes to your mind when you hear the word networking. So if you're not in there already, go ahead and scan the QR code to get into slido.com, or go to slido.com and enter the code there. Tell me the first word that comes to mind when you hear the word networking. Talking to people? Yep. Strangers? Yep. Small talk, meetings, LinkedIn, sure, connection. Awkward, yes, I get it. Totally get it. Work, right? Meeting new people? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, finding connections with strangers. Yeah, definitely. Inauthentic, that's an interesting one. Awkward, that one, that one really popped up. Yeah, no, I get it. Transparency, that's an interesting one. Yeah, for sure. I'll give you just, just a few seconds more to add, a few ideas. Uncomfortable. Fair enough. Totally get it. Okay. Yeah, these are great ideas. Thank you. Thank you for being honest about how you feel, because I know it's easy to say, I'm good at networking, but it's like, no, it's scary. And that's completely reasonable. Exactly. Talking to people, right? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for contributing those ideas. I appreciate that. And yes, awkward and uncomfortable are two of the ones that come up a lot. And that is for good reason, right? Like, it's hard to talk to people you don't know, especially if you feel in a position where, like, hey, I need to get a job, or like in my case, like I need to get a client, I need to get work, I need to get a contract. So kind of our focus today, I hope, will be on making networking more organic, more authentic, and doing it in a way where you don't feel awkward or weird about it, at least not as much. It's one of those skills, the more you practice it, the easier it gets. When you first start, it's going to feel a little weird. But hopefully these tips today will give you some strategies you can use moving forward. Okay, excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and switch the screen. So let's talk about what networking actually is. And this is my own definition based on my own experience. I see networking as a process of intentionally building mutually beneficial relationships within a business setting. Now, the key phrase here is mutually beneficial, because it's really easy to walk into a networking situation and just think about what you need from somebody. But I have found you get a lot better mileage and you feel a lot better about yourself when you go into it saying, what can I offer somebody else? So we'll talk a little bit about how to do that today, give you some specific mindsets and tips. But I just want to level set on that first, focusing on the mutual beneficial relationship. So let's just briefly talk about some ways that you can use networking. Obviously, if you're looking to transition, you're probably looking to connect with potential employers or recruiters. Networking is a great tool for that. If you're self-employed or if you're a freelancer like I am, you're probably using networking to find clients or collaborators, people you can work with. Another great way to use networking is to build a support network of peers that can they can help you through your transition, people who you can rely on for help, advice, and camaraderie. So when I first started my freelance career, I started out as a freelance journalist. And I kind of fell into learning and development on accident, like a lot of people tend to do. And for a while, for about 2, 3 years, I was kind of doing it on the side, but I wasn't really getting a lot of traction. I wasn't getting a lot of good contracts or clients. And it was only when I actually started joining virtual groups for instructional designers and when I started networking that my career really took off. I think networking honestly has been the single most effective tool for my professional formation. And that's simply because I got exposed to all different types of perspectives and people at all different levels of their career. And it gave me a much better holistic idea of what this industry looks like. And it also helped me build a network of people where I could learn from them. And I could also see um, my own formation happening in real time almost. And of course, you can also use networking to find mentors, or when you get to a certain level, look at offering mentorship to others as a way of giving back to the industry. So the main thing I want to highlight with networking is that it's a really great alternative to the hard sell. Now, of course, this kind of applies more to a business setting, but I think this also is applicable when you're searching for jobs or looking for mentors or connections or whatever. And I think we all know what the hard sell is, but I've got a meme up here on the slide, and it's Dwight Schrute talking on his cell phone. And the text says, "Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's my sales pitch, so buy it maybe." This is how I feel when I try to hard sell anything, and I'm terrible at it, right? I hate showing up and being this person. I'm like, so buy it maybe. Networking is a great alternative to that because you can think of it almost as a form of content marketing. Instead of going out and pushing yourself, your services, your expertise, your employability, whatever that may be, you're going out and you're actually adding value, right? You're answering questions, you're providing recommendations, you're making connections. And in doing so, you're building social capital, you're building trust, you're building, reputation and credibility. And those things can come back to you later because people, say like potential employers or potential clients, already know you, they know what to expect of you, and more importantly, they know that you're generous with your expertise and your time. So that's going to give you a big step up when it comes to connecting with people and also with meeting your own objectives as well. Okay, I'm just going to check the chat here real quick. Let's see. Okay, so Mark says, former recruiter, current career coach, eyeing transition to L&D. Would love to connect. Excellent. Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing your contact information, Mark. That's what we're here for. Excellent. Yeah, okay. I see some inside jokes on history majors and geology majors, so that's awesome. Okay, yeah. Ken Garcia says, I love that, social capital. Yeah, exactly. I mean, just like you have financial capital, you have social capital. It's what you put into your relationships, and that's what makes them valuable. Okay, so next we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to build a diverse network. I have found that you get more value from your network if you diversify it intentionally. Now, of course, probably the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about diversity is DE&I, for good reason. You want your network to reflect a wide variety of people with different backgrounds, different identities, different racial backgrounds, all the different things you can think of. You want to make sure that your network is not full of people who only look and think like you. And this is not only good for your career, but it's also good for your formation as a human being, right? The more experience you get with different perspectives, the more well-rounded and empathetic you become. So apart from that, here are some other ways you can diversify your network as well. You can diversify the way that you connect with people. I tend to try to do a combination of both virtual and in-person networking. So I'm part of online groups like this one, but I also go to in-person gatherings like Chamber of Commerce meetings. And I try to cross-pollinate those two to kind of get the best out of both. And I'll share in just a few minutes how you can do that. But that's one thing to keep in mind is diversify where you're finding people, where you're chatting with people. You can also look at broadening your network horizontally by reaching out to people who are from different industries. A lot of times, basically as L&D professionals, we kind of, sometimes get stuck in our own little box. And it's good to know, people who really are professionals in L&D. But it's a good idea also to broaden out when you can and connect with people from other parts of a business, say like finance or compliance or human relations or things like that. Human resources. That will help you build some of your business acumen. You can start understanding some of the problems that other parts of a corporation have, and that will give you an idea of how learning and development can help step in and solve those problems. This kind of goes more to becoming more of, what's called a trusted learning advisor, or working on a more strategic level to solve problems, which is kind of a whole nother topic. But just to kind of give you kind of food for thought, think about reaching out to people in other industries and other parts of a business so you can start developing your business acumen. You can also think about connecting with people either through coffee chats, virtually or in person, or by joining service groups. For me personally, TLDC has been an amazing service group for me to be a part in. Both through both through thinking or speaking at these kinds of events, as well as sometimes helping to host them, or just just being part of the community. This is a very generous community. I've gotten a lot of value out of it. And there are other groups out there too that are similar that you can join and that you can give back to the industry while you're learning how to be a good practitioner within it. And then the final thing I want you to think about is building diversity in your network vertically. So like in terms of like expertise and seniority. I try to intentionally fill my network with people from all different levels in their career. So I have people who I consider to be my goal setters. These are people who are 5 to 10 years ahead of me in terms of expertise and seniority. These are the people who I want to be when I grow up, essentially. I know that what they know, I'm not ready to do that yet, but I want to keep that top of mind. So I'm continually pushing myself to improve. And then I have people who I call my pace setters. These are people who are maybe 2 to 5 years ahead of me. Not too far up in the stratosphere, but enough where I can say, okay, these are things I can start learning and implementing today. These are things that I know that I can accomplish. And then I have my peers. Those are people who have roughly the same background and experience and seniority as I do. And then, of course, there are people who are newer to the field than I am. And I like connecting with newer people like you guys as well, because it gives me a new perspective on what I do every day. And it's really fun and exciting to see people who are really excited about this field. So there are some ways to diversify your network. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty in terms of what can you do to network effectively. So I touched on this earlier, but I would say the main thing to get from today's session is that the guiding principle for good networking is to always add value. And I actually borrowed this from a friend of mine on LinkedIn. She's a professional friend, and her name is Yolanda Fraction. She's always on LinkedIn sharing really interesting ideas and insights. And several years ago, she shared this thought where always add value. And I think that she learned it from, a professional manager, a former manager. But this idea is that whenever you're networking with people, find ways that you can improve their lives or give back to them. Again, it's that idea of where you start, looking to give before you receive. So I have some suggestions on how you can do that. But first, I wanted to give you a chance to kind of noodle on that. So if you want to go back into Slido, just type, just a short response to this question. How might you be able to add value to your potential connections? What are some things that you can offer them? And again, if you need the QR code, it's right there, or you can go into Slido and enter the code. Encouragement? Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Listening board? Yeah, excellent. Behavior analysis? That sounds fascinating. Yeah, I mean, if that's your jam, that's huge. Authenticity? Yep. Advice from your own experience. Empathy, right? International perspective. That's really exciting. I always get a lot of value out of people who have a different national perspective than I do. That's really cool. Feedback, reviewer. Yeah, your connections. Excellent. See, you guys are experts already, right? Yeah. Keep an open mind. Resources you know about. Yeah, brainstorming partner. Yeah. I know one of the things that I probably need to do more of, honestly, is share the resources that I have found to be useful. Sometimes I'll dive into like journal articles or books or something like, oh, this is really cool. And the few times I remember to do it, to go on LinkedIn and share it, it's been really helpful because it helps other people find it helps other people find a resource that could be valuable for them. And, from a self-serving perspective, it also kind of helps establish my expertise. But the main thing is that I'm helping other people learn, what I'm learning. Comment and share other people's posts to increase their visibility. That's a really good one. Especially on LinkedIn or other platforms where those algorithms really reward engagement. Yeah, I mean, even saying something as simple as like, hey, thanks for sharing. Doesn't have to be anything super involved. But that little nudge is just enough to kind of boost their comment and the algorithm. And that's a really good way to give back. That's awesome. Humor as appropriate. Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, if you've got a weird sense of humor like I do, yeah, definitely share that. And that's a great way to also connect with people on a human level too. Personalized invite. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, I try whenever I'm connecting with somebody on LinkedIn, I try to send a personal message every time to basically tell them why I want to connect with them. And that's usually like, hey, I love this insight, or oh, look, we're in adjacent fields, or hey, you live in my city and we do kind of the same thing. I've always found for myself, and I think other people have said this too, that when they get a personalized invite, they're much more likely to accept the connection than if not. Just because you've made the effort to tell them why you want to connect. That's huge. Okay, yeah. So these are all great suggestions. I couldn't really add too much more to this. This is wonderful, right? So you already know what you can do to add value and expertise, or what you can do to add value to your connections. I would just add one small thing here, which is, and I think we kind of touched on it a little bit, but think about sharing your journey as you're learning out loud, right? So when you learn something new or valuable, share it with somebody. I mean, whether that's on LinkedIn or whether you have a connection that you communicate with on email or something like, hey, I read this book and I think you'd really love it. Showing your learning journey is a great way to connect with people, especially in learning and development, because we're all, we're all learners at heart. So we love that kind of stuff. That's a great way to build connections as well. Okay, there's just a few more here. Look over portfolios and endorse skills. Yeah, that's a great one. Portfolios are a really good way to get ahead in this industry, just because they demonstrate your expertise in authentic situations. So giving somebody that, just basically 15 minutes of your time to look over their portfolio could be huge to helping them. And also, again, building your credibility and expertise. Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you for sharing these. So these are all tremendous ideas. I appreciate that. And we're going to go ahead and just kind of cover some more general tips. We've probably covered some of these, honestly, so I won't spend too much time on this. But One of the main things is just make it easy for people to reach you. And like for instance, if you have a LinkedIn account, make sure that you have that uh, link to connect with you. Um, basically on your portfolio site, your website. Make sure to also update your email signature to include all the ways people can connect with you, not just your phone or your email, but all your socials and all that kind of stuff. Your email signature is a great way to get the information out about you. Okay. I kind of mentioned this earlier, but kind of that cross pollination between virtual and in person networking. So let me give you an example. Let's say you go to a conference in person and you meet a few people who you really jive with. Make a commitment to, one, get their contact information, and secondly, when you get back from that conference, as soon as you can, to follow up with them and ask them to connect. And this can be on LinkedIn, this can be through email, however you choose to do it. But try to strike when the iron is still hot and when they still remember who you are. It's also a good idea just to include a sentence or two to describe when and where you met. So it kind of jogs the memory. It's like, oh, I met this person at that conference. Okay. And then finally, just like you would in a LinkedIn invitation, include a little bit about what value you got from them and why you want to connect with them. And then end with an invitation to connect. Again, LinkedIn, email, whatever platform you're using, but give them an invitation to connect with you and further the conversation. So this could be, just like, hey, follow me on LinkedIn or let's connect. Or it could be like, hey, let's set up a virtual coffee chat sometime. I've done that quite a bit with my connections, and it's been really valuable just because, um, you know, coffee chats, especially on Zoom, take about 30 minutes, fairly simple, but it's a really good way to build that face to face virtual connection and really cement that relationship. So, on the flip side of that, let's say that you have a connection online who you really like hanging out with, or basically you've been commenting on each other's posts on LinkedIn for a while, and you notice either that they live in your area or that they're going to a conference you're going to be going to. Make the effort to reach out to them and see if you can have a face-to-face meeting as well. Because again, we're kind of programmed as human beings to connect in person. So if you make the effort to do that, that'll really help you solidify the relationship. Something you'll probably want to do as well is try fine tuning your elevator pitch. And this is, again, more kind of geared toward businesses, but I think it also applies to folks who are looking for full-time employment as well. And if you're not familiar with this, your elevator pitch is your 30-second succinct value proposition, or what you do, who you do it for, and why it's important. And of course, this will change as you spend more time in the industry and as your career evolves. My elevator pitch has probably changed multiple times in the last 6 years. But before you go to a networking event or before you connect with somebody on LinkedIn, take just a minute to kind of jot that down and just, try to refine it a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to memorize it, but just have something in mind. So when people ask you, what do? You have a really good response to that. I always try to end a networking conversation with this one question, and it really does help. And the question is, what can I do to support you? Again, this is just a way to communicate, hey, I'm here for you. I want to help you as much as you might want to help me. Again, it's a mutual reinforcing relationship. That's a really simple way to cement that. And then finally, I would say the most important thing is to just be yourself. And having transitioned careers multiple times, I understand how challenging this can be, especially when you feel new. You're surrounded by people who you think know way more than you do. It's really tempting to shapeshift or to just fade into the background, right? But neither of those are really going to get you where you need to go in your career. So I would recommend instead try being yourself, regardless of how you feel, regardless of the imposter syndrome or whatever. And here's why. Your genuine presence is both a filter and a magnet. For people who maybe aren't the best connection for you, being your authentic self will help them know that. But also, being yourself will also attract the people who are going to gravitate to you. And they can't know if they like you unless you are your true authentic self. So one thing I learned in business, and I think it applies to life in general, is that You don't have to vibe with everybody. Not everybody's your client, not everybody's your friend. That's totally fine. You don't need to have a massive network full of people. You can have a very small network full of people who really respect you for what you do, and that's incredibly valuable. So focus more on quality rather than quantity. Okay, I'm just checking the chat here real quick. Okay, so Daphne says, I love Sarah Canistra's rule of thirds. 1/3 of network, people doing what you want to be doing. 1/3 of your network, people in management and leadership positions. And then 1/3, people who motivate and inspire you. Yeah, that's a great formula, Daphne. That's awesome. And that's, yeah, I mean, that's a really great way, to diversify. Okay, let's see. Mark says, one note regarding LinkedIn invites. They used to give you 300 characters. They've now shrunk that to 200 characters. So get creative and personalizing, but stay authentic. Yeah, I know. It's kind of like writing tweets or X's or whatever they're called now. Yeah, you have to be really succinct. Jared says, those personalized invites also give context when future conversations come up down the road. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. That's a really good insight, Jared. Just, you want to help people remember you, and context is a great way to help people remember who you are. So yeah, that's an awesome suggestion. So Abby says, a great way to get started would be to share to share you attended this event, highlight some speakers, share your favorite session, and start a conversation. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a great icebreaker. After you've been at any kind of event, virtually or otherwise. Okay, so Stephanie asked, if you have premium, I think you still get 300. Oh, 300 characters on your invite, perhaps. Okay, excellent. All right, I have still just the free membership on LinkedIn. I mean, I've gotten some value out of it, but I know other people's mileage may vary. So it kind of depends on how active you are in it, what you're using it for. I think it gives you different settings for like job seeking and such, but I'm not sure. If anybody has other insights on that, please feel free to drop that in the chat. Okay, so now we'll talk about just some skills, basic tips for virtual networking. And again, we might have covered some of these, so I won't overcycle on this too much. Kind of like we mentioned before, if you find a conversation on LinkedIn or otherwise that you find interesting, feel free to hop in and leave a comment. Always be mindful of your digital presence. Make sure that the way you represent yourself online is aligned with how you want to be perceived in person, right? Sometimes it's easy to imagine that the rules of polite behavior do not apply online, but as we all know, that's not true. So just a simple reminder: just be mindful of your digital presence. Offer to make introductions when it's appropriate. And I think we mentioned that a little earlier as a way that you can give value to somebody else. So when I meet a new connection who has a need or is curious about something, and I know that somebody else in my network can answer that question, I'll try to facilitate an introduction on LinkedIn through the direct messaging feature. You can loop in more than one person. And, just basically say, hey, so-and-so, this is my friend so-and-so, and just kind of do a cross introduction. Kind of explain why you think they might be a good connection, and then just, let them connect however that works best for them. But that's a really great way to add value as well. The last thing I would say for virtual networking is find high quality virtual communities that are adding value to you. I have found lately that smaller moderated communities like TLDC, I'm getting more value out of that than I am out of LinkedIn right now. And, your mileage may vary. That's totally fine. But all that to say, kind of be mindful about where or, what virtual environments give you energy versus the ones that take energy from you. So if you're on a virtual platform and every time you log in, it's like, that could be a sign that maybe that's not your jam anymore. And that's totally fine. You don't have to stick around if it's making you just like, all the time. That's totally fine. Find something that works for you. Find where you get value as well. Okay, so let's do a few tips for in-person networking. This one can be a little bit more tricky just because the awkward factor goes up by several orders of magnitude. I mean, I have been in-person networking off and on since, well, gosh, I don't know, probably about 6 years now. Every time I do it, I have to kind of remind myself how to do it again, and I have to kind of talk myself into it, and then I have to kind of like coach myself when I'm going through, and then afterwards be like, "Whoo, I did it!" Um, but it's one of those things where the more you do it, the more second nature it becomes. So all that to say, don't let in-person networking scare you. With practice and time and patience, it can be a lot less awkward. So the first thing I would recommend is bring business cards of some kind. I mean, even if you don't have a job right now, or you don't have the job that you want right now, just make some really simple business cards that have your name, kind of what you're aspiring to as your title, and then some contact information. I know you can go on Canva and make some really decent business cards fairly quickly. That's how we get our business cards. Or an alternative you can think about is digital business cards. And we use these as well. And we use a service called Blink, BLINQ, I believe. And it's actually quite nifty. You can have, basically a QR code on your phone. And when you're ready to connect with somebody, they can scan the QR code. It'll bring up your contact information, and you can add your socials. You can add a link to schedule a meeting, all kinds of fun stuff. And then they can save that contact information to their phone, and it gives them the option to share their contact information with you. And it's all digital. You don't have to print off business cards. We're still using the free version, and it's working just fine. Actually, at the end of this presentation, I'll have a link to my Blink business card that you can scan, and you can kind of see how it works. But all that to say, there are many different ways to have business cards. You don't have to just have the print ones now, but have something that you can share with somebody, so it makes it easy for them to connect with you. I put this in person networking, but it probably applies anywhere. Have some good, insightful questions in your back pocket when you're going to any kind of networking event. I found one of the most insightful ones, especially for learning and development, is just asking people, how did you get started in this industry? Because again, so many people fall into it from other different, parts of a business or from other industries. So I always get a lot of, I always enjoy hearing how other people got into the industry. You can also ask them things like, what was the most formative or interesting part of your career development so far? Or something like, if you could look back and give your past self a piece of advice, what would it be? Like, basically just questions that draw out more about them and hopefully invite them to reflect more on their professional journey and what they're doing now. When you are in person networking, it's a good idea just to remain situationally aware. I know it's really easy to just kind of get laser focused on a conversation and not see what's going on around you, but it's always good to just kind of maintain some situational awareness. I was at a networking event last year, and one person gave me a really good piece of advice, which is when you're standing in a circle, as people tend to do when we're networking, we stand in a circle for some reason. Kind of tilt your body to the side and kind of leave an opening next to you to kind of signal to other people that they're welcome to join the conversation too. It's a simple thing you can do, but it really can help other people feel at ease, and it's a great way to invite other people into the conversation. And then finally, of course, always get contact information. See if you can get a business card. See if you can get a virtual business card. Take down their contact information on a piece of paper. Something you can just use later to follow up with them. Okay, so I see we've got some more stuff in the chat. I'm just going to check that real quick. Christina says, I got caught flat-footed last in person because everyone wanted my QR code. Yeah, I know. It's weird, but like when I bring my QR code, everybody wants paper. So I mean, I think having both is just a good way to cover your bases. I get it. Mark says digital business cards are awesome. Cool. Thank you. He mentions there are other different ones out there like Blink. He uses Wave CNCT. Cool. Awesome. Thanks for that recommendation. Excellent. Okay, so there's some information here on, let's see, Premium LinkedIn. June says that without premium, you only get 5 personalized notes for connections per month. Like Jared said, sending a blind connection can seem unauthentic. Is there another way to reach out to them? That's a really good question, and I'm not really sure about that, but I definitely see what you're saying, June. Like, I mean, I've tried that before, and it's kind of like the equivalent of cold calling, right? It's like, hey, I don't know you, but let's connect, and it's yeah. That might be one area where maybe getting a premium subscription might be worth it if you were doing a lot of that. So that's one thing to consider, maybe. Jared says, I signed up back for LinkedIn Premium and asked if there was a discount. Customer support told me that I could sign up for the annual plan, $20 a month, and if I wanted to cancel early, I'd get prorated refund. Still not free, but better than full price. Hey, that's good advice. Cool. Cool. All right, cool. All right, well, thanks to everybody for your insightful comments. I didn't get to all of them, but I appreciate you contributing to the conversation and sharing what you know and sharing your enthusiasm. So I have one more question for you real quick. This one is, just kind of like pulse check. How confident do you feel about networking now? On a scale of 1, being networking is crazy scary, to 5, I'm ready to conquer the world. Just kind of drop a chat or, just drop a vote and tell me how you feel. If you haven't done so already, looks like we've already got quite a few votes, so that's good. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Bridget.
Yeah, definitely.
I have some follow-up questions for you when you're ready. I wasn't sure if this was your conclusion or if you had a little bit more to go.
Yep. No, let's dive into that now. This is a perfect time.
Okay.
Okay, fire away whenever you're ready.
All right. So I have two. I'm sure other people will chime in with more questions in the chat. I have 2 big questions. So the first one's just a practical question. So when you're thinking about how you spend your time networking online with things like coffee chats and writing messages and keeping up with other people's posts, how much time would you say you spend on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I never tracked it. I probably should, but I try to log into LinkedIn like once a day, sometimes more.
Okay.
I'm not contributing as much as I used to, and that's one thing that I'm not really doing great on. I need to contribute more. I need to participate more rather than lurk. That's always a temptation, and that's something I think I need to work on in Q1. But yeah, I would say just a ballpark, maybe 20 minutes a day, 20 to 30.
20 minutes a day. That's not much. That's like reasonable, yeah. And for I'm asking about coffee chats because I get because I think from participating in things like this, I get a lot of requests for people who are starting out to do a coffee chat. And sometimes I have time in my schedule and I can do them, but more often than not, I look at my day and I think it's just impossible for the next couple of weeks. And it makes me feel guilty. So I think I'm just looking to see how often do you ask for a coffee chat? What's your coffee chat etiquette in terms of when you'll do them, how often you'll do them?
That's a really good question. Yeah. I try to ask. Well, I mean, to be fair, I don't ask for a lot of coffee chats from other people. I don't get a ton from other people either, to be honest. But when I do ask, I try to, I try to leave it open ended. Like, hey, whenever works best for you. I try to leave it at 30 minutes. Although, I guess if you're kind of pressed for time, you could do maybe 15. That's going to be a little tight, but I would say 30 minutes is probably max, especially for somebody you just met or somebody you haven't really connected with very much. And just always be open to the fact that, hey, I don't have any availability for the next couple of months. That's cool. If that happens, you can dig back into your network and maybe there's some other folks you want to connect with in the meantime.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, that's great advice. And then I wanted to talk a little bit more about your tips and tricks for networking in person, because I know, speaking for myself, I'm fairly comfortable with the online bits and pieces, with replying and interacting that way. But for me, the idea of going to a conference and casually, between sessions, doing an elevator pitch, that feels daunting to me. So a question about your elevator pitch. Is this something that you have in your head ready to go at a moment's notice? Or is it something that you sort of think about if you have a specific situation coming up?
That's a good question. Mine is usually in the back of my mind, ready to go. And I think a lot of that honestly is because I spend a lot of time just in my work reflecting intentionally on like what value I want to add, what I do, why it's important. So I
Mhm.
don't really have to spend a whole lot of time like writing it out and memorizing it because it's part of, I mean, it's basically integrated into what I do every day. So
Okay.
that does keep it top of mind.
Sure.
But in terms of like, yeah, like the awkward factor, I mean, I usually don't start with an elevator pitch. I'm like, hi, I'm Bridget Manley, and blah, blah, blah. Like I try to like just
Okay.
say, something that, kind of breaks the ice. Like, wow, that was a great session. I love this and this and this or whatever. And then once people start warming up to you and they ask, like, oh, what do you do? Then I have something to respond to them in a really, fairly cohesive, understand,
Okay.
cohesive statement. Yeah.
Okay. Can I put you on the spot and say, hey, can we hear it? Can we do a little dry run of Imagine We're at a conference?
Sure, why not?
And
Sure, why
also,
not?
like, to be even more annoying about it, you can't ask me for mine back because I don't have a good one and it's too
That's
awkward.
fine. That's fine.
So it's gonna be very one-sided. But I would love to hear it if that's okay with you, if you're comfortable with that.
Sure, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, my basic elevator pitch is I'm Bridget Manley. I'm managing owner of Ascendant Design and Training, and we are a boutique instructional design agency that partners with companies to help them better train their employees to perform better on the job. Something like that. So,
Great. That's
yeah,
great.
I'm
That
like,
was really good. Yeah.
thank you.
And it's
Thank you. And
short as well. It's like I think I've built it up in my head that you have to talk for, a minute and a half or 2 minutes. And I don't know. I don't know. That's seems very doable. Is there like a formula that you use to keep
yeah,
it concise?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, start obviously with your name, right? Easy. And then, your title and what you do. And then I try to then focus on the differentiators for our business. So ours is boutique. We only work with certain clients, we only do certain kinds of, projects.
Mm,
And then of course end with the value proposition of like, how we benefit other people.
great.
Yeah.
Nice. That's a good formula. That's easy to replicate too for all of us.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. And I try to keep it short because that allows people room to ask questions. So that
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
helps, kind of
Because
helps further
the word
conversation.
pitch is like you brace yourself for, oh, they're gonna try to sell me something or they're gonna whip out a list of prices and try, but it's really just an introduction, isn't it? Just like a really nice, impactful introduction.
Right, exactly, exactly. And it's a way to like open up the conversation, allow them to ask questions, get to know them. Like I never start with like a sales thing because I'm just
Yeah.
like, I just want to get to know you. I mean, partly
Great.
because I want to see if I'm going to be a good fit for you. Also, I kind of want to know about somebody else I'm working with so I can see if they could possibly be a good fit for us. I mean, again, I mean, it's back and forth. It's definitely mutual.
Yeah. Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
And I said I had two questions. I thought of one more. And then also if anyone else wants to ask questions in the chat, that would be
I see we have a
great.
few in the Q&A. So,
Oh, in the Q&A, I always forget that section. So my last one then, and then we'll move to these. What do you see people doing wrong when they network? What are some common ways that people make a little bit of a mess of it?
that's a good question. Yeah. I would say just like being purely transactional and this, to say like, hey, I mean, you do this for me, I do this for you. And of
Mhm,
course, I mean, in a business environment, the basis is transactional, right? But you want to also start by being relational. I
mhm,
mean, because I think that any good working relationship, whether it's an employee, an employer, or a client, whatever, it's founded on a relationship of mutual trust. So
mhm,
you want to start, I think, being relational rather than transactional. And then kind of a follow-up problem I see too is that sometimes people reach out to the same person over and over again for help. I mean, once or twice, totally awesome, totally fine.
mhm.
I'm always happy to answer questions. But, it helps to kind of look for some other people who might be able to review your portfolio or give you some tips and just kind of make sure that you're, you know, um, respecting other people's time and attention as well.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. That's great. Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay, I'll let you get to yeah, we have a couple Q&A questions in the chat if you like.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I'll start with the first one first. And I apologize if I apologize if I'm mispronouncing this, but bandana. What are some red flags to watch out for when building relationships with others? Yeah, that's a really good question. Let's see. Like if somebody again is trying to be just purely transactional, um, basically anything that just makes you feel awkward or off, like trust your gut, I would say. Um, mainly because your subconscious picks up on a lot of subtle cues that your conscious brain doesn't always process. So anything that makes you feel off or awkward, that's probably a really good sign that, maybe it's a good time to step back and kind of reassess how much you want to engage. Yeah, and like, of course, anybody who's, basically acting unethical or asking you to do unethical things, people who aren't good contributors to the industry, like if they're just in here to like, make a whole bunch of money and cash out, like not great, or if they're, um, you know, if they're more about building their own personal brand than contributing to the industry, that's a red flag for me. And of course, that's really subjective. So what you might define as kind of out there is going to be different from mine. But just overall, I mean, just try to kind of like refine your discretion, so you can find people who are good contributors and who are ethical practitioners in the field. I would say that's an excellent question. Thank you. Okay, so Wendy says, how do you navigate the balance in trying to listen to others and offering your own input online and in person? Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think that's great that you're aware of that, Wendy, because that's a sign that you're self-aware, and that's fantastic. And that's a really good skill to have for networking, is being self-aware. I'd say there's no fast and hard rule. Just to be on the safe side, I try to like encourage other people to tell me about them first to make sure I'm giving them that space, and then take my turn to tell them about me. I mean, I'd say it's just one of those things you have to kind of just be aware of. If you find yourself talking about yourself for 20 minutes straight, man, take a step back and, hey, here's like, I mean, like pull out one of those good questions you can ask to help draw out the other person as well. Okay, so Vandana says again, what is a good response time to reply to LinkedIn messages? Sometimes I can't get to all of them and then I feel bad about it. Totally. LinkedIn shame is a true thing. I get it. I don't know. Like, I'm not the best at this sometimes, so I'm not the best source, but I would say within a couple of days, sometimes those can really build up. So I try to get through them a couple of days. And at the same time, don't feel like you have to accept every connection. You really don't. I think it's a good practice before you accept a connection to just, take a peek at somebody's profile and see what they've posted and see what they do. And again, just make sure that you're going to be somebody who, somebody who you're going to vibe with, somebody who you want to have in your network. So that's that's something to keep in mind as well. Okay, so Mark says, after successfully connecting and conversing the first time, whether via LinkedIn or in person or otherwise, how do you like to approach following up afterwards or thereafter? Is there a general timeline or cadence you like to follow to maintain the connection? Yeah, that's great. I would say, anywhere from a couple days to a week. I think longer than a week, it's people kind of tend to forget about the situation or like where you met, so it's kind of hard to kind of revitalize the conversation. Yeah, I would say like a week at max, personally, and then basically as early as possible afterwards that you can reasonably do. So. All right, cool. Any other questions? I'm going to check the chat just to see. Okay, Wendy said, I don't like to talk about myself, so that's good. Yeah, I get it. Okay. Going back to a previous question, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing. Chital, one red flag is when the person asks for your personal number. Yeah, that's a good one. Sometimes it's hard to know when to give that out. I personally have a business number that I give out, and I don't get my cell phone number, so something to think about. Vandana, I got your name right. Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for that feedback. Okay, cool. Okay. Oh yeah. And then up, just one more thing I wanted to highlight up in the chat. Wendy says, she says these interactions can be tricky, especially having ADHD or ADD. Takes practice and self-regulation. Yeah, definitely. So I would say to that, go at your own speed, know what works well for you. Again, be yourself. Totally. All right, cool. Well, we're about close to the top of the hour. So unless there are any other questions, I'll let you all get back to your conference today.
All right. Thank you so much, Bridget. That was really helpful. And I know I got a lot out of it. So it looks like everyone else did too. We appreciate it. And I think you're going to have a whole bunch of people from TLDC be networking with you very shortly.
I look forward to the invites in my LinkedIn. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.